Hey guys, and welcome back. In this section, we're going to be going over hue saturation, which is one of the most powerful tools for adjusting colors in Photoshop. You can do so much with it. Jumping in, we're looking at our hue saturation image. It's in your sample images, so you can just go to open, make sure to go to your sample images, tools and techniques, and then you'll see hue saturation. So I'm going to hit F for full screen. We're going to go to our adjustment layers and over to hue saturation. There we are. Now, basically, here's how this works. We talked earlier about colors in Photoshop being broken up into hue, saturation, and lightness, and here they are, hue, saturation, and lightness. Now, by default, if you just take this slider on the hue scale and adjust this to the left or the right, it will leave your saturation and lightness alone and just adjust your hues. Okay, and it's gonna do it for all of the hues in this image and for my whole image. Okay, let's just reset that. Saturation, it will do the saturation for all of your image, all the way up, all the way down, you get black and white. All right, there we go. And your lightness was basically just, it's just kind of like gamma. Basically, it's gonna take your dark levels and make them darker, and this will take your light levels and make them darker. Generally, I don't use lightness in this view. You also have a colorized view, or a colorized mode rather, and that's when lightness comes in a little bit more handy. So let's go ahead and click on colorize here, and this will actually color your entire image a specific color. So let's go with a nice bluish green, something like that. Looks pretty good. You can adjust the saturation of all of the colors in your image, and of course you can change the lightness as well. So you can have a dark saturated image, you can have a light desaturated image if you'd like. All right, so pretty cool stuff there. Let's go ahead and click off that colorize. All of these things up until now have been affecting all of the colors in our images, but this tool is much more powerful than that. You can actually select individual colors and just edit those. And this is where the tool gets super cool. Here in your little slider, you've got where it says master. If you click there, you can see a drop down to reds, yellows, and so forth. Let's go ahead and start with reds and start adjusting the reds. And you're gonna see it's gonna start to change just the reds in my image. Pretty cool. Now, as it's changing the reds, you're gonna notice that it's kind of getting the oranges too, right? Like this, I would call that orange right there, but there's a bit of a range. Now, how this works is you check out these two sliders here at the bottom, or two little rows right there. Basically, your top one is the color you're working with, and the bottom one is whatever color you're turning it into. So as I move this, you're gonna see these start to change, right? You got your red range, and that's kind of turning into blue, and in your image, you can see that happen too. Okay, now what you can also do is, let's go ahead and crank this over here. What you can also do is click right here and just move this around, and it's gonna start to affect different colors in your images. Okay, different color ranges, which is really interesting. Also, by the way, you can make this bigger. So if I click on this little guy right here and drag it out, I can make it bigger. You can actually click in this gray area, and that's gonna drag that out too. There we go. So as I continue to drag out, the affected area gets larger. Now, you have two little internal sliders. Okay, and this is like all of the colors in this range will get changed. And then you have these two external sliders. There we go. And that's where it kind of like feathers out. Okay, there we go. So you can see your internal range, that's like your hard, every color's changing then, and then it kind of like feathers out. So you can use these sliders here to really pinpoint different colors. So let's go ahead and just do that. I'm gonna hit reset. We'll start over, and let's go to where it says master. I'm gonna go to my reds, and we'll say, you know what? Let's go ahead and I wanna change the oranges in here, but I don't really wanna affect the reds too much. Let's just change the color of the car. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna grab my eyedropper here. And with your eyedropper, you can select on the color you want. So you can see as I move my eyedropper around my image, my little hue slider here is moving around. You can also see where it says reds, you can also see that's changing depending on where I click, right? Some say magenta, cyans, whatever. So basically what that means is don't even worry about which one you select here. Like I could go to blue and then use my eyedropper and then click here, and it's gonna automatically adjust to that color. Okay, so don't worry about it. All right, let's go ahead and reset that. We're gonna go to reds. I'm gonna pop my eyedropper, click right over there. And now what I wanna do is make sure that I'm just gonna affect those oranges. So just as like a little bit of a visual cue for me, I'm gonna crank up my saturation and I'm gonna crank up my hue. And that's just gonna show me where we're actually affecting. Let's crank that saturation up and crank the hue up. And you can see it's definitely affecting the orange, but it's still getting that red, right? So what I wanna do is start to click here and then move this just a little bit until it's no longer affecting the areas that I want. Okay, and there we go. Like over here, obviously it's affecting mostly her shirt. And over here, it's affecting mostly just that bust behind her. And it's not really affecting our subject's shirt. In this case, it is affecting our subject's skin because her skin is orange. So you can see it's getting the car back there, which is nice, but it's also getting our subject. Not a big deal. What we're gonna do is lower both of these values back to 0. Okay, let's go ahead and change the hue of the car. Let's just go to more like a yellowy. That's pretty cool. And then remember, all adjustment layers come with layer masks. So I just click on my layer mask and I'm just gonna paint black on my layer mask. Okay, now when you paint black on your layer mask, it makes that layer invisible wherever you paint black. So in this case, I'm just gonna kind of paint, black right over top of my subject. Because we don't want our subject to look green. That doesn't make any sense. So just paint black on my layer mask right over here. If you mess up, no big deal. Just paint with white. And you can use X on your keyboard to switch between your background color and foreground color. So when you're on your layer mask, it's really helpful because you can hit X to go between black and white. There we go. And so now we can see we're just changing that color. I can always double click right here. I'm gonna get back to all of my settings and we're gonna go to where it says master. Let's go back to our reds because remember that's what we changed earlier, and we can continue to change that. Look, we could make it like a magenta. Maybe it's a bit on the saturated side, so we can go ahead and lower the saturation as well. And we could bring up the lightness if we wanted to. Sure, that looks good. Cool pink Jeep. Pretty fun. Let's just make that invisible and visible again. So the nice thing about this is we don't really have to select out the Jeep itself. Okay, we don't have to use any kind of advanced selections. We're selecting it by color within this tool. Hue saturation is incredibly powerful. In this case, we just targeted a color and changed it, but you can do this to do, you can color tone your image with a hue saturation adjustment layer as well. And we're gonna get into that in our future. So if you wanna do big color changes in your image, hue saturation is really a great way to go. So for instance, like skin tone is like a subtle color change, right? Sometimes people's skin is just a little bit shifted this way or this way. I wouldn't recommend using hue saturation. For that, I recommend selective color, and we're gonna go over that. But hue saturation is when you wanna do big changes like this, like change the color of the car from like orange to pink. That's perfect for hue saturation. Okay guys, well, there we go. Isn't this easy? Let's move on to our next adjustment layer.